Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another tutorial. I'm Dennis, and today I got something pretty fun for you guys, so let's check out this animation. Okay, so this is a particle trail animation I made using a bunch of different things, one of which is the Plexus effects in After Effects, as well as Trapcode Particular, a little bit of Optical Flares, and a bunch of other stuff. And the way I set it up was first in Cinema 4D, and then I exported my scene into After Effects and applied all the other effects to it. So there's a lot to cover, and let's just jump right into it. Okay, so here we are in C4D, and the first thing you want to do is to create your path. So I'm just going to use the pen tool to do that, and I'm going to change the type to cubic because I find that to be a little easier to work with. So I'm just going to click and drag and make a basic S-curve like so, and then you can go back and adjust it to your liking. So I'm just going to offset these points a little bit so they're not all on the same plane. And I'm pressing F1, 2, 3, and 4 to toggle through my different perspective views. So here I am on the right view. Okay, let's see. Something like that. Yep, it doesn't have to be too complicated, especially for this tutorial. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. And I'm also going to change the intermediate points to uniform and crank up my number, because you see right here it's a little faceted. So if I turn that to 18 or 16, it's a little smoother. Okay, so this is my path, and you can always adjust it. It's really no big deal. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to create a null object, and I'm going to change the display to point and make that big so we can see it. And this is going to be my control that I'm going to use to track all my lights and emitters. And I'm going to rename the path real quick to my main path. Okay, so for my control null object, I'm going to right click and add a align to spline tag to it, and down here I'm just going to drag that path into it. So now what you can do is you can keyframe to position, and the null will track along your path like so. And if you click this here, it would track more correctly. Yep. Okay, cool. So next I'm gonna push this in a little bit, and I'm gonna turn off this grid, the grid floor, so I can see things a little easier. And I'm just gonna find a nice angle to add my camera. So let's see. Yep, something like this looks pretty good. I'm going to go back to my path and adjust it a little bit so that it goes off screen, like so. Let's see. Yep. And yep, something like that. Looks pretty good. Let me save my project real quick. So Plexus trail tutorial. Okay, and you see there's still a little faceting, so I can just crank up my sampling here, 32. Now it's smooth. Okay, let's go back to my control object, and once again, if we keyframe this, we can see this track along the path. So okay, and I'm working in 1080p 24 frames per second, and let's just make this about 10 seconds long, 240 frames, right? And if you hit Control D real quick, it brings up your project settings, and if you go under key interpolation, by default is set to spline, which is useful, but in this case I'm going to change that to linear because I don't want any easy ease in my animation. So let's go to my first frame and keyframe the position, hit Shift G to go to your last frame, and I'm just gonna crank that up to 100. So if you play that back, you see our null object or our control object just track along nice and easy along the spline. It could be a little faster if you want. You know, you just move your keyframe and move faster. But I'm just gonna leave it at the very end. Let me undo that. Okay. And at this point, I'm gonna add a camera and make sure you're in the camera in the active view. And I'm gonna keyframe the first frame, and I'm gonna hit Shift G to go to the end once again, and I'm just gonna push that in a little bit so you have a little bit of a camera drift in your animation, and it will look cool when you have all the particles kind of like, you know, parallaxing and whatnot. And keyframe that again. So let's play back our animation. Okay, so this is pretty much the basic setup for everything. And yep, and we're good to go at this point. So next thing you want to do, I'm gonna click out of my camera real quick. See, you see our camera. So I'm gonna create a null object again, and this is gonna be for my lights. So let's create a light. Let's move that to the side a little bit. I'm gonna duplicate that light, and I'm gonna bring both of these lights as a child of that light object, like so. And next, I'm gonna throw that lights object underneath my control. And if you go under your coordinates and you right click the little arrows right here, you will zero out your coordinates, and by doing so, you should be aligned exactly to where your control is. So now if you scrub through your animation, your lights will track along the path. And the reason I did it this way, so there with the null object here, is because now I can animate the rotation of my lights of this null object as it animates along, so it will give additional secondary animation in my project. So let's just do that. Keyframe the beginning. Let's go to the end and just crank this a little bit. Keyframe, and if we watch, there it is. You will rotate along. And another thing I like to do, especially for this type of things, I will add a tracer object, and this will just help me see my my path a little better. So in my tracer object, I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna add both of these lights to it. Light 1, I should rename them better. So let's go back to my main camera, and if I play this back, you will see the path of my lights a little better as they're rotating, and you will create some really cool dynamic animation. And another thing you can do, because these lights are parented, if you think they're a little too wide, is real easy. If you just go to your coordinates and just, you know, push that in a little bit, and this one you can push that in a little bit and play that back again. So this part is all just like trial and error, and see what you like. But yeah, that looks pretty good to me, so I'm happy with it. And this tracer object is awesome because you can use that for a lot of different things, like creating light animations and light streaks and whatnot. But in this case, I'm just using it to visualize my path. Just drink some water. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'll turn off my tracer object, and I'm gonna click out of my camera real quick once again. Next, I'm gonna add a plane, and this is gonna be my floor. So I'm gonna go to a side view here, just make sure that the floor is on the bottom here. I'm gonna go back to my lights, and under details, I'm gonna turn on inverse squared for my fall off. That usually will make things look just a little nicer. And yeah, okay, so I'm gonna scale my floor way up just with the scale tool, and I'm gonna add just a standard material to my floor. Let's call this floor. Let's call this floor. Rename this. Make it a little easier to track, and let's change the color to all the way black. And in your default specular, let's just crank up the let's see, the width a little bit, and maybe turn that down a little bit. Okay. And with both my lights, we can make this even a little smaller. Let's go back to my camera and just do a little quick render preview. Yep, that looks pretty good. You'll see what I use this for later, but I'm just setting it up now. So now let's see. Okay, cool. Well, maybe I'll make this a little bigger. Okay, let's see. Okay, cool. Very good. Okay, so we got our floor. So basically what I'm going to use this floor later is it renders super quick. I'm going to use this as pretty much a track map. If you go back to my animation, you see I have these little grids here. I built this directly in After Effects, this grid floor, and whenever the lights come close, it lights up, right? See, it lights up. So that's pretty much what the floor is doing. It's just a basic standard material with specular, and whenever the lights come close to it, it will lights up, and I will render this out as a separate pass. And yeah, you'll see later. Anyways, so that's the setup for that, and we're almost there. The last thing I want to do is to set up my particles. So I'm gonna click out of my camera view real quick. So let's create an emitter, your basic particle emitter. You can find that under Simulate and Particles Emitter. It's just very basic, not much to it. If you go into your object settings, if your birth rate editor, render rate, visibility, start emission, and emission. So I want this to be emitting the whole time. So start at 0 and at 240 at the last frame. And there's the life of my particles. So let's just make that 200 for now. Add a little variation. They have some initial speed. Let's make that 50. You know, all these values you can just kind of like play with as you go. Okay, cool. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop this emitter as a child of one of my lights, right? And once again, right click the little arrow to zero out all your values. So now is exactly where my light is, right? And I'm gonna copy that and then do the same thing on the other side. Zero out, now it's on the other side. And what I'm gonna do with both my emitters selected, I'm gonna change that to the size of it to 0, so you're just emitting from a point. And I'm gonna change the angle here to 90, so it's emitting, like, you know, coming out. And I think right now it's emitting forward, so I think we have them backwards. So maybe if I turn this 180 degrees, it should be, there you go. Now it's emitting behind you. Okay, cool. So that's the setup for my emitters, and now we're just playing around with the look of it. Let's turn on my lights real quick. Let's turn off this floor. And filter lights. Okay, so I'm just turning off the light so I can see things a little better as I'm working. Okay, cool. With both my emitters selected, I'm gonna crank up the emitter amount to quite a bit, to 10 times 100. Okay, cool. And they all have a little speed in the beginning, 50. And okay, that's kind of like what I'm trying to get. But right now, all the particles are just emitting. They're just flying out really far. So I kind of want them to kind of like contain, so you can still see the path. So what you can do is you can, under dynamics or particles, you can add a friction. So that's kind of just like try to slow things down a little bit. So, so they're not going out as far as they were. And if you crank up the strength, you will be even more. Here, let's try 50. Okay, there we go. That's getting closer to what I was looking for. Okay, cool. And another thing you can do is add a little more randomness and variation to these particles. So you can go back to your simulate particles tag, and you can add a turbulence, good old turbulence. And I don't know, crank up the scale 100%. Let's see how that looks. So what I'm doing particles is all just a lot of oh, look at that, a lot of trial and error, like a lot of things. Okay, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna crank down the strength a little bit to like 2, maybe make my scale like 50%, so that I think when you have to scale smaller, they're moving more individually. When you crank up the scale, the whole thing's moving together as one, which you might want for some things, but in this case, yeah. Let's crank the strength to 1. I just want a little really subtle animation on these particles. And another thing, I want these particles to die out a little quicker. So right now their lifespan is 200 frames with 38% variation. Like that. Let's make that 150 and see how that looks. Let's see. Did you start dying out? Okay. Let's make it 100. There we go. Okay, now they started dying out sooner. And I'm gonna crank up my friction even more. So, and turbulence. Yeah. Okay. It's coming together. We can let's turn up our emitter amount so we'll have more particles. There you go. And you know what? In my control object, I'm gonna push this a little earlier so that it moves a little faster. Let's see. There you go. Okay, cool. Okay. I think, you can play with this forever. I mean, this is kind of fun, right? But I think for this tutorial, I'm pretty good with what we have right now. And one last thing you want to do is, okay, I'm going to create a Polygon object. Polygon. And then click all of my camera real quick. And go to my Polygon object. I'm going to hit triangulate and hit C to make it collapsible. Go to my point. I'm going to select these 2 points. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to select the point that's left. And I'm just going to zero it so it's right at the center. So now what you have is just a polygon with one single vertex. And I'm going to throw that under my emitter, with both of them emitters. So this way, every particle is just one single vertex that it's emitting. Okay, cool. I think now we're ready to export our scene into After Effects. So I'm gonna turn back. I'm gonna turn on my emitter first. So there's 2 parts to this. The first part is I'm gonna render out the floor object with my lights, and then export the cameras and all the nulls. And also I'm gonna add a external compositing tag to my floor so that when I export it, you will have a null object in the 3D space in After Effects that you can use for positioning. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my render settings. I'll put all frames, right? Under save, let's go render. Plexus trail. I'm just gonna name it something. Floor. Show floor. And yeah. Okay, cool. Anti-aliasing. Geometry is fine. I mean, we're not really doing like any high-res rendering techniques, so it should be fine. So I think we're good. So I'm just gonna render this. I'm gonna render to picture viewer, and yep, it's rendering right now. Should take about a couple seconds. It's really fast to render, which is why I like it doing this way. You know, it's all about speed and efficiency. Okay. So while it's doing that, I'm gonna save out a AEC file, and this is what I'm gonna use to import and export all my 3D data into After Effects, which I can use later to do all the cool stuff. So save project, and Plexus trail tutorial. Okay, that's fine. So save that. I'm gonna let it finish rendering. And while it renders, another thing you want to do, well, actually, let's just wait for this to render. I'll pause the tutorial, the recording. Okay, we're back, and it's done rendering, and this is our little floor animation, floor rendering that we did. And just real quick, in After Effects, I ignored that. If you import that AEC file we just saved out, you should have all your data. You have your camera, your lights, and your floor animation, right? And also you have a null object where your floor is, and you see there's a slight drip on the camera. So we're good to go on this part, and we can even start building our scene right here, but we're gonna export our particles first. Okay, so at this point I'm gonna turn off my floor. I don't need my lights. I'm gonna turn back on my emitter object. Let's see, make sure everything's still looking good. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is to use the Plexus to OBJ exporter, and you can get it for free from Robite. It's a free script or plugin. I'll have a link in the descriptions for you guys to download this. It's really useful. So I'm gonna click the Plexus OBJ sequence, and it's gonna ask you to save it somewhere. So I'm just gonna make it save 3, pass 3. Pass 3, save. So now it's exporting the scene with all my particles. Okay. All right. So let's come back to After Effects, and let's start creating our animation. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to rename my lights as emitter 1 and emitter 2. The reason for that is I'm going to use Trapcode Particular to create some of my some of the particles trails, whatever. Okay, so I made a new solid, and I'm gonna apply Particular to it, and in my emitter type I'm gonna use lights. And I'm just gonna zero out all these values right here. So now if we scrub through our animation, we have a little light streak tracking with our lights. Alright. And we're done now. It's very cool. And we can get back to this and do a lot of fine tuning, but just real quick, let's just apply some of these presets. Opacity over life, just taper that down. Size over life, let's taper that down, something like that. Or size, maybe make it a little smaller, like 2 is fine. And we gotta crank up our particles per second, so make it like 200. There it is. Yeah, this is like one of my favorite parts when you start compositing all this stuff together. So you got that. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new solid. I'm gonna call this my Plexus trail. And you also want to import that OBJ sequence you just imported for Plexus. So pass 3. I'm gonna import a sequence, and I'm gonna drop that in to my project and turn it off because I don't need to see it, and rename this as my particular trail. Okay, so this is my Plexus trail. So let's work on this part first. I'm just gonna solo that layer, and let's add a Plexus effects to my layer, and under add geometry I'm gonna add OBJ. Okay, and let's select that OBJ layer we just dropped in. So pass 3, and I think what you gotta do is, let's see, under transform OBJ, you gotta make sure in order for your sequence to sync with your camera in After Effects, you have to zero out your XYZ position and also invert the Y. So now we have that OBJ sequence in Plexus that we can play with. Very cool. And it tracks with everything perfectly. And yeah, and now we can start fine-tuning things. So our point size right now is 2. Let's make it 1. Make it a little smaller. And let's see. Get color from vertices. Okay, so these points here is you can get the opacity and the color from the OBJ panel here. So if I change color here to like a blue, your little dots will turn blue and opacity. But I'm gonna uncheck the get opacity from vertices, and let's make it a little more opaque, maybe like 80. And I can make this even a little less, 0.75. Okay. Okay, so have our initial particles right here. Let's add another renderer. Let's add some lines to this. And yeah, by default it looks like this. So this is like the fun part of Plexus. Okay, so max number of vertices to search. So this is like how many lines it's connected per point. So I'm gonna just crank that up to like 5 for now. And first of all, the thickness is way too thick, so let's make that way smaller, like 0.1, maybe 0.2. And max distance, I'm gonna just, yeah, something like that is good. I think maybe 4. Oops. Okay. Maybe 4. Okay. And you know, when I'm playing with this, I'm just kind of like trying some of the different presets they have. There's no set way to do this, I don't think. There might be. Maybe fill. Yeah, okay. That looks pretty good. Maybe my point size is still a little too big, so let's crank that down a little bit. Okay, very cool. Just a little. All right. Next thing I want to do is let's add under add render. Let's add some triangulation. So this will add some surface area to your path. And again, right now, maximum number of vertices way too high. Let's make that like 3. And our distance is way too large, so let's crank that way down. And once again, let's uncheck the get opacity from vertices from your OBJ object, and we can add a custom one. So I'm gonna make that real low. Let's see, maybe 20. Oops, 20. And let's see. That's cool. Maybe 4. What the hell? Make it more or less. You know, you're just kind of like playing around. See if you get something that looks cool to you. I mean, that looks pretty good. All right. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we can swing back and keep adjusting it, but that's kind of the idea. You know, you just kind of like experiment with some of these values, see if you get something that looks kind of nice for you. That looks pretty good. Okay, let's do a quick RAM preview. Let's see how that looks. Nice. Nice. Very nice. Yep. That looks cool to me, so let's keep moving. Okay. So now I unsolo that layer, and I'm gonna hit Ctrl-Shift-H to hide my lights and all that stuff. So that was my Plexus layer, and this is my particle trail layer. I'm gonna make both of these add for now. So for my particle trail in my animation, I just had a very little hotspot in the beginning that's kind of emitting little particles. So it looks like it's turning into Plexus with these little funky shapes. So to do that, let's go to my particular layer, and let's turn the life of my particles way down. Let's make it 1, and even like 0.5. can make the size a little bigger. Oops. Make it 3. Okay. And I'm gonna duplicate that layer. And make it even like 0.4. And you know what? Maybe I don't need. Maybe for my size over life, I just have it smooth like that. Okay. I'm gonna duplicate that layer, and this time I'm gonna add a little bit of velocity to it. So maybe like 30. Yep. Give it a little bit of randomness, and make it last a little longer, like 0.7 or something, and make the size really small, like 1. Yeah, maybe that's too much. So 20. Okay, maybe 1 second. Oh, sorry. Make it 1 second, 8 seconds. And you know, always nice to add some randomness to my particles. And I'm gonna name this as my particular head. So this is the hotspot, the head, and this is kind of the trail of little particles falling off. So in my head, I think it's still a little too long, so maybe like 0.2. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Cool. Yeah, let's keep going. So a cool thing to have in particular is under physics, you have you can add a little turbulence to your particles. So under turbulence field, I can just add some subtle affects position, maybe like 20, a little bit. And for my scale, I'm going to turn that down to like 6. So let's do a quick RAM preview of just this part. Nice. Yep, it's starting to come together. Very cool. Okay, I like that. So what you can do is you can duplicate that particle trail layer again. Change your random seed, and you know, just change the values a little bit, make it a little faster, maybe it lasts a little longer, and add some randomness to the size of your particles. I'll do the same thing for the one before, and some randomness to the size of the particles, and it will just add more detail and variation for your scene. And for both of these, let's change our color to like a bluish color, as with our Plexus, the particle color. And let's turn the blending mode to add. I like add. Yep. Yep. Okay. You know, for my head, this part, let's make the size 2, even smaller, 2.5, and like make the size just really small, just a little hotspot. And for both of these, let's make it 0.8, size 0.7. And maybe the life is a little too long. Let's make it 0.5, 0.6. So we're just fine-tuning things, you know. And maybe I'll change the color of my main particle head to a bluish tint as well. And the blending mode to add. Okay, almost there. Okay, so another thing you can do, make a new solid, and we can add Lux to this. Trapcode Lux, which is a really cool plugin that allows you to create some volumetric lighting, and it's based off the your actual light settings, so you can change the color of your lights to a bluish color, and Lux will turn into that. Make sure I'm adding on top of this, and under your point lights, your intensity, you can crank that very small, say 50. So you would just add a little more whatever you call this is. And another thing you can do, you can maybe add a curves to this and make it just, you can crush it. Oh, sorry. Select my Lux layer, add a curves, and crush it. Maybe turn down the red. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Starting to come together. And you could also add Optical Flares, which is an awesome plugin from Video Copilot. Optical Flares. And under your source, you're going to track light. Right? And change the mode to add. And this is just the default settings. And I'm just going to use, I think, one of the presets. Blue Steel by Zoolander is powerful. So turn down the scale. Just some very subtle lighting. Yeah, there you go. And let's add some flickering. Make sure you randomize the lights, like 20 and 20. Yes. There we go. Very, very cool. Okay. It's coming together. So at this point, let's start making our scene looking a little better. So what we can do is let's add an overall adjustment layer. I'm going to call this color correction. So let's just add a curves. Okay. Maybe do a little contrast, see how that looks. Maybe tint the whole thing a little blue, right? And let's add a little glow. Oh, and make sure I'm working in 16-bit instead of 8-bit. Add some glow to this whole thing. Crank up the radius. Crank down the intensity to like 0.3 or something. So on and off. Very cool. Okay, so let's do something about this floor. So right now we have just our rendered layer here, our floor layer. Let's move that on top of my camera. If I solo this, this is what it looks like. And you know, you can just you can tint this as it is to some color, and it will start coming together like that. But what I was doing is I made a custom grid object. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'm just gonna make a new 2K comp, blank comp. I'm gonna call this my floor grid. I'm gonna make a new solid. Let's make that white color. And I'm going to apply the Venetian blinds effect to it. And let's make the transition, say 95. Make the width, say 10. You can duplicate this effect and change the direction to 90 degrees. And you see, and you get your little dots. Right? That's very cool. You can duplicate that layer once again, and you can change the width this time to, I don't know, say 30. And 30. So now you get additional dots up here again. You see that? And if you want them to look a little bit smaller, let's make the transition to like 96 instead, or something like that. Okay. Or if you want, you can make them even bigger, like 40. So when I'm working on this, I'm just kind of trying some different values, see how they look. You know what? Yeah, I like 40 a little better. Oh, hold up. Floor grid. Yeah. You can duplicate this again. I'm gonna turn this off real quick, and I'm gonna apply just the grid generator. All right. I'm gonna turn that corner point to width, and let's make that 80. Yep. Okay. And let's bring back these two lines effects. If I isolate this width layer, if I turn back that on and make the width 20 and 20. Right now, if I turn back that on, let me make it 10 by 10. There it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, just 90 by 90. There we go. So let's turn that on and off. So pretty much that's the idea. You just keep building these, you know, these dots until you get something that's kind of looking cool. This might not be exactly what I did here in my animation, but you know, that's the same idea, so close enough, I think. Yeah, okay. And we can make this add on top of each other to make it more prominent. Okay, so that's our floor grid. Let's go back here and let's drop that floor grid comp into our comp here. Let's turn that into a 3D layer. I'm gonna hit A8 to bring out my options. I'm gonna turn off accept light right here. And remember that external compositing tag that we exported? That's a null object here. And if we bring out our position and rotation, because it's not moving, we can uncheck out this. So I'm just going to copy the position of the null object to my floor grid, and I'm going to rotate this by 180, so it's 90, so it's sitting on top of this. There it is. Okay. And what I'm going to do is with my the rendered floor reflection, I'm going to use that as a track mat, Luma mat I mean, so that the floor grid is only visible when the lights are, so if I uncheck unselect everything, it's only visible when the lights are close to it. And if you want to crush that, you can add little curves to that and make it less prominent or more prominent. And with my floor layer, I can add a tint to change my color to a blue color if you like, but I'm gonna leave it more whitish like so. And maybe I'll add a glow on top of that. Let's see how that looks. Nice. And I can also duplicate the floor layer by itself right here. Let's add a tint to it and change that to a very saturated bluish color. Maybe we don't need this. Well, we'll see. And let's just screen that on top of everything and turn down the opacity. Maybe not a screen. Let's try some other color dodge. 50. Oh, jeez. Right. crush that. Make it very subtle. Yeah. 12%. Yeah. So it's just adding more subtle detail to your scene. Okay, so that's the idea, and you can keep playing with this. All right, and the last thing we'll want to do, the last couple of things we'll want to do, is I want to add some depth of field to my Plexus layer, as well as my other layers. You know what? I think the triangulation part, I think, is a little too much right here. Let's try 13. Make it a little less. You know, it's all about, for me, it's all about being subtle with things. And okay, so make sure our camera options are on right here, and in your render settings for your Plexus down here, you want to check on depth of field, and that kind of that depends on your camera settings right here. So turn on your depth of field in camera, and right now our focus distance is way too far, so let's bring that way back to 1000. Still too far. And also our aperture is, in this case, too high. So I'll bring that down to like 10. Let's try 500. Yep. Maybe 6. Yep. Okay. 400. Okay, so let's find a frame here. Let's just make sure that this is in view. Let's try 200. There it is. 150. Oops. 250. Yeah. With a lot of these things, again, it's a lot of this trial and error. So 200. You know what? 210 looks good. 210 looks good. So what I can do is a little keyframe the focus distance. Move that back. That back a little, and let's crank that up. Something like that. So we'll have a rack focus shift trick right here. And if you can, I don't know if you can tell, but the blur right now is a little noisy, but we can adjust that in the Plexus settings itself later. Let's just work out the field effects. So I'm gonna keyframe the focus distance here, and let's turn that back up so that we can see things. There it is. There it is. You know that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Because he's working with such a shallow depth of field, you I'm just, the way I did it, I'm just kind of like find some different spots and just keyframing my focus distance, you know, so something like that. That's the idea. Okay. Okay, cool. So in your render settings under Plexus, you have this render quality. So I can turn that to like 2 times or even 3 times, and our blur is gonna look starting to look a little bit better. See? Very cool. So that looks pretty cool. Okay, let's turn back my particular layer, and they should be also following the depth of field. Okay. So let's turn everything back on. Bam. Okay, cool. I think we're pretty much almost done here. Another thing I can do for the floor itself, I can add a fake blur, depth of field blur effect. And so I just show you how to do that. So I'm gonna isolate the floor, and oops, I'm gonna create a white solid. This is gonna be my matte. So I'm gonna create a quick garbage matte, something like this. Hit F to bring out your feather. Feather this out. Okay, feather this out. Something like that. I'm gonna pre-comp this, and I'm gonna call this my floor depth of field map. And going there, I'm gonna add a black solid as the background. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna uncheck this. I'm gonna create a new adjustment layer. Call it depth of field, and I'm gonna apply the depth of field effects from Fish Loot, which is awesome. And I'm gonna select the map and then click somewhere here and crank this up. Let's make it 10, make it very obvious. There you go. 15. Right, so it just gives you a little subtle vignetting. So just little effects you can add to it. So let's run preview this whole thing, see how it looks. I'm gonna pause this while I run preview. All right, we're back. It's done run previewing, so let's play this back. And I don't know about you, but that looks pretty dope for me. Oh yeah. Alright, cool. We're done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and be able to learn something from it. Yep. I will see you guys next time. Thank you.